Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 2nd, 2017 regular meeting of the Milford Board of Aldermen. Please join me as we salute our flag, and then please remain standing for a moment of silence in memory of those who lost their lives in Las Vegas last night. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Anderson?
Present.
Alderman Beatty?
Present.
Alderman Bevan?
Here.
Alderman Beer? Alderman Casey?
Here.
Alderman Gurman?
Here.
Alderman Giannatasio?
Here.
Alderman Golden?
Here.
Alderman Grant?
Here.
Alderman Hardiman? Alderman Smith? Alderman Sutton?
Here.
Alderman Vecchiarelli? Here. Alderman Vitro?
Here.
Alderman Vitale? Here. 14 present, Mr. Chairman.
There's 14 members present. We do have a quorum. The next portion of our meeting is devoted to public comment. Statements are limited to the legislative functions of the Board of Aldermen. The time limit granted to each speaker shall be 3 minutes. Residents, taxpayers, and electors may address the board at this time. The board encourages speakers not to express derogatory, insensitive, or offensive statements, or to engage in personal attacks against individuals. In order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that everyone please limit their comments for 3 minutes. Anybody wanting to address the board can do so at this time. Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Frank Matthews. I live on 40 Founders Way here in Milford. Before I start talking, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to help run this city while the rest of us sit on the couch. I know you don't get a lot of thanks for it. So I'm here to because I heard a rumor that we're finally getting around to thinking about dredging the ponds, and this has been a concern for me. You know, about 10 years ago, there was an article in Milford magazine, and these were called the Jewels of the City. They had beautiful pictures of our ponds in it. And now they look like the cesspools of our city. They're a tremendous safety hazard in my mind because they breed, they're breeding ground for West Nile virus, Zika virus. The north end duck pond, the walls are caving in. I have 6 grandchildren that live on Founders Way, up above that duck pond, so it's a concern for me. And I don't know whether you know it or not, or how long most of you have lived here, but about 35 years ago, the flood, I think of '82, flooded the bottom of this structure. And we lost a whole lot of records, which they had to freeze, and we spent a lot of money getting those records back. But the wisdom of the Board of Aldermen at that time was to build floodgates. So the pond in back of the City Hall, if you look off to the right, has a structure with floodgates in it. And the north end duck pond has the same structure in it. And the thinking was that if we knew there was a hurricane coming, we would pull those gates, we would drain those ponds, and they would become an accumulator or a way to stop the flood from coming back into City Hall. Those floodgates are covered right up to the top with mud now. You can't even open them. So all the wisdom, all the money spent was wasted if we don't dredge these ponds. The second thing is I hope that when you finally do this, that we can do it with some common sense. Because what I heard was that we're going to dredge behind Stonebridge first. And then we're going to dredge behind City Hall, allow all the silt and everything to go back and fill in Stonebridge. And then we're going to dredge up on the north end duck pond and allow all that silt to come behind City Hall, fill that in, go down and fill in Stonebridge. Guys, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think we ought to start on the north end duck pond, let the silt come down, dredge that up behind City Hall, let that silt go down, and then dredge behind Stonebridge. That is filled in so bad behind Stonebridge, knowing Richie Conine, I'm a little surprised he hasn't declared that his property and continue to build on it. So I understand we do have to dredge that out. The last thing I'd like to say was our previous Director of Public Works had an idea that he shared with me that he was going to build a steel box, put it up on the north end of the post road near the pumping station, so the water that came through that box would allow the leaves and the silt to fall in it, and then it would come out of the box and go down river. And once a month, the city would come in with a backhoe, dig that stuff up, so we wouldn't keep on having to dredge the ponds. So you may want to look that idea up. I thought it was a great idea at the time. And I hope you guys are planning to go forward with this. We've waited a long time for it. We've done enough studies. We had the city come in, the state come in twice and approve it. So I think it's time to move. Thank you.
My name is Janet James, and I live at 72 Oldfield Lane, which is at the very mouth of where the water comes from the Sound into Gulf Pond. And my concerns right now of what's going on in the pond with the oystering, which I've spoken to some of the city officials about, but it is, my main reason is the ecosystem there and the birds that are there. And I've lived on and around the pond for 30 years, and I've seen it move this way and that way. Right now, it is, and this is not my term, but it is like the Wild West there. We have oyster boats coming in as often as they can possibly get under the bridge. They're from I don't really know where. I've been told there are 5 different groups or companies that have permits to go in there and to take oysters. I don't know how many oysters are in the pond or what their function is in the pond, but I can tell you that living on it right now, I do kayak out there, and there is just so much scum and silt that has been disrupted that is coming into the whole grass areas. When I moved there 5 years ago and was able to really witness the amount of wildlife that was there, we had 50, 60 snowy egrets that would be in the tree out in front of my house. They'd be all over the pond. This summer, except for the 2 months that the oystering was limited or was non-existent, they were gone. There was not one snowy egret. We do have great blue herons, which we used to have more, but we also have some white herons as well. But the small snowy egrets that are nesting and born on Charles Island would come there. They are no longer there. I'm not a scientist. I love nature, but I have read recently a lot about what's happening to the islands along the shore in Clinton and in the area above us, and they are trying to limit the amount of human disruption that goes on to allow us to continue to have the wildlife we have. The other concern of mine is that there is nobody that knows how many people come in there and how many people leave or how much they take. They're out there with rakes, and yesterday, right in front of my house, there were 6 guys in waders, and there was a boat coming along throwing sacks of oysters into the boat. Nobody has a count of how much is coming in and out of there or where it's going. So I guess my real concern is that we take hold of this is Gulf Pond, and this is another pond issue, but I think it's the most special place in Connecticut. And as a citizen and as an environmentalist, I'm extremely concerned with what's going on. I think that we need somebody to watch over this and know what is happening there. So that's my concern. I would like you to find a way we could pay attention to it. Thank you very much.
My name is Alice Oliver. I live at 404 Gulf Street. You have all heard from me about my concerns about what is going on in Gulf Pond with the commercial harvesting of oysters. When I last wrote to all of you, it was before the September 20th reopening of Gulf Pond, and I thought that tonight I would bring you up to date on what has been going on since. On September 19th, well before the opening date, there were already 2 boats in Gulf Pond placing posts into the oyster beds to mark where they would harvest oysters. They did not harvest any as far as I could tell, so they did not break any rules. However, they were there. September 20th was a very windy day, and I did not see any activity. September 21st, they were out there in force. They were dredging. And I know that someone asked about dredging and got a response that wasn't quite accurate. Dredging means that they take a huge rake and they rake through everything that they can find on the bottom of the pond. They stir up everything. They stir up stuff that has probably been buried for 20 years. It all rises to the surface. They were dredging. On the 3rd day of the opening, there was another boat that came right to my yard. I took pictures. They were immediately in my yard. I did not confront them because of what had happened to my husband, which I told you all about the last time he confronted them. They were there for about an hour, and when they left, they made an obscene gesture to me. I am tired of having my property invaded by these people. I believe that Milford has the right and the legal obligation to place some controls on what is going on in Gulf Pond. I do not understand why nothing has been done. It's been 2 years since the DEEP of the state of Connecticut opened Gulf Pond to this type of commercial recovery of commercial oystering. These people have taken thousands of bags of oysters out of Gulf Pond. Milford has never received 1 penny in payment for these oysters. My personal preference would be that Milford has the right to restrict commercial oyster recovery to nothing. My personal preference is to get them out of there altogether. If we cannot do that, then at least we should put in place the logical restrictions that the Harbor Commission has suggested about limiting the types of recovery, no dredging, 200 feet away from personal property, and other things that I enumerated in the letters that I sent to all of you. It is high time that Milford takes advantage of the legal availability that it has to exert some kind of control over this situation. We are losing thousands of dollars every year from having these people take these oysters at no cost to them other than the cost that they incur from the boats and the licenses to the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut is getting all the income. Milford gets nothing. And it is just, to my view, way past time for the people in Milford to do something about this. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Burby. I'm at 11 Birchers Avenue. I had a question on the land acquisition on Oronoke Road. I'm just, with the fiscal state, the actual state of Connecticut is, and not passing a budget, I'm just wondering why the city of Milford would be considering purchasing land. And then with the purchase of land, you know, if it was able to, what are we actually going to use it for? And you know, before purchasing, is any testing going to be done to see if there's any contamination on that property? That's all I have.
Good evening. My name is Dominic Cotton from 60 Corona Drive. I'm actually in front of you guys tonight because I want to thank members of our Board of Aldermen and our mayor for coming to participate in Orange Avenue's presentation with their PTA as a school of excellence. I know we're one of 5 schools that were presented with this award in the state of Connecticut, and I know our good mayor came in and offered a proclamation pronouncing last Thursday as PTA, Orange Avenue PTA Day. So I certainly appreciate that. And what I truly appreciate are the members of the 1st and 5th District who came to our PTA meetings as an invitation and participated with them, because community participation was one of the big parts of receiving this award. So I want to thank Alderman Bevan, Alderman Vitale, Alderman Genetasio, Alderman Anderson, Alderman Beatty, and am I forgetting anybody within this? I don't believe so. But I would like to thank you all for your participation in our school. Obviously, our education process is important to me as a person who has a child in the school system, and our community process and participation, I think, is one of the things that makes our city great. So I just wanted to come and thank you guys for all that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ann Berman. I live at 77 Pelham Street, and I'm happy that I attended the ordinance committee, and I want to thank the board for inviting Jennifer Siskind to come and give us the scientific values of what would happen if all this material would come in. And I don't really know. I read a lot about how communities have been devastated when they've been fracked, and one of the things is that did concern me, not only what all this material would do in a state, in a town like us. We have so many waterways. We're just one big water pool. oh, excuse me. And I hope that this board will go along with the ordinance committee and approve of the ban on having any of these vehicles coming through. And I know that one of the towns who did have the fracking, the biggest thing was truck after truck after truck after truck went through their town. It was, they couldn't even breathe. And so if we had a whole army of trucks coming from Pennsylvania through our town, I don't think we'd be happy, along with all the other stuff being dumped. So I hope you will, as a member of the community, will go along with the ban. And thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairman Vitro, distinguished members of the Board of Aldermen, other city officials. My name is John Drapp. I reside at 41 Jackson Drive. And I just wanted to come up and echo the sentiments regarding the concern over the acquisition of the property near the transfer station. And the reason for that concern is, it's my understanding that besides the fact that there are other locations in the city that could serve this purpose, today's October 2nd, and I have my budget here that was adopted by the city a few months ago, and that line item, just one I want to talk about, which is the ECS grant of $8.3 million. Here we are, it's October 2nd, and no indication when or if that money is coming. So I think in light of the circumstances that we find themselves in, is this a worthy acquisition? Perhaps, you know, assuming the proper inspections were done and so forth, but the simple reality is that this is not the appropriate time, because we have a situation on our hands where there is not going to be enough money, and there is no indication from Hartford that help is going to be coming down. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, Alderman Beccarelli, agenda item number 3, consideration of minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the regular minutes of the Board of Aldermen meeting held on September 7th, 2017.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We do not have a special organization meeting to consider, so we'll move on to item number 5, Chairman's report. I have here an invitation to the board members. The National Marine Fisheries Service Northeast Fisheries Science Center of Milford Laboratory cordially invites us all to attend its open house scheduled for Saturday, October 14th, from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Anyone interested in going to there? I'll leave this here on the desk. You could take the information off of it at that time. Moving on to the agenda item number 6, Mayor's report and recommendations. Mr. Mayor, is there a report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Over the course of the last month since we last met, this world continues to be faced with devastation, destruction, and tragedy. Yesterday, the city of Las Vegas experienced a tremendous tragedy. Our heart goes out to them. The residents of Puerto Rico and Caribbean islands also suffered much, and our hearts and thoughts go out to them as well. I know that there's some local fundraisers. I encourage you all to participate. And with that, I respectfully request your consideration and action, those items 8A through 8G. If you have any questions, I am here to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item number 7, we have no unfinished business. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, Alderman Vecchiarelli. Agenda item number 8A.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the attached agreement between the City of Milford and the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for Wampus Lane resurfacing and restoration within the public right-of-way, and to authorize the Mayor and Public Works Director to take all steps necessary, including but not limited to the signing of documents to effectuate said agreement.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item number 8B.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached agreement between the City of Milford and the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for Gulf Street resurfacing and restoration within the public right-of-way, and to authorize the Mayor and Public Works Director to take all steps necessary, including but not limited to the signing of documents to effectuate said agreement.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8C.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached agreement between the City of Milford and the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for Old Buckingham Lane resurfacing and restoration within the public right-of-way, and to authorize the Mayor and Public Works Director to take all steps necessary, included but not limited to the signing of documents to effectuate said agreement.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8D.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the attached policy regarding the disposition of junk and salvaged vehicles.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Alderman Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Assistant Director of Public Works. Oh. Either Steve or Chris, if I may have one of them to answer the question.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Saley. I have a question for you.
Sir.
This is concerning disposition of junk and salvaged vehicles. Can you maybe enlighten us on what do you do right now with this stuff?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bevan. I didn't hear the question.
What do you do with your junk or salvaged vehicles right now?
Presently, when we go out to bid for or buy new equipment, we ask for a credit or a reduction in the price. So we get a credit for returning it to a vendor that presently has it. So they'll take it either for scrap if it no longer has any real value, or they'll give us an amount. Like similar to what we did with the trash trucks. When we returned some of the trash trucks, we got a monetary credit from the company that supplied the original trash trucks.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Bevan, this is a motion that really came through the police department, through our chief of police. Mr. Saley is referring more to vehicles that we no longer use as opposed to ones that are really salvage. This emanated when we had a series of police vehicles that got in a situation where they were totaled. They were a total loss, and they sat in the police parking lot for a long, long period of time, became a problem, And at this point, we come to you on a a la carte basis periodically to seek permission to dispose of vehicles that, again, are total losses. Our insurance companies have deemed them to be a total loss, and the city attorney's office met with our police department and looked at some best practices from around the state, around the country, about how policies deal with these total loss vehicles so that they don't have to sit for months and months upon end. And this was the policy that we looked at and are putting forward to you to adopt. But again, the city attorney's office was involved with the actual creation and drafting of this proposal for you folks to consider.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8E.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request pursuant to 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statute for the acquisition of a 10-acre portion of the property located at 1125 Orinoco Road, and to authorize the mayor and the city attorney to take all steps necessary, including but not limited to signing of documents to effectuate said acquisition.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, maybe to the mayor or city public works director. The purpose of the purchase of this property is, question?
I will give you a high-level explanation and then turn it over to our public works director who can get into the details. The public works director did come to me with this potential purchase of approximately 10 acres. One of the things that I required is that this would cost us no money, that this would be cost neutral at the end of the day. There would be some initial outlay that would be made up. The basis or reason for this purchase is really twofold. One, we need a place if there is another storm of biblical proportion like Storm Sandy or Storm Irene, to act as a staging area for some of the green materials, the branches, the logs, things like that that we pick up all over town. The site that we presently have, according to our hazard mitigation committee, needs to be revisited. We need another site. Previously we used the bottom section of Eisenhower Park into the Footfield parking lot. We are looking for something else. We need at least 10 acres per FEMA requirements. We are looking for sites. This one seems to be ideally situated. We are also looking for a site, I know that it came up under public comment, to position the fill or the material that we dredge from the duck ponds along the Wepwag River. That project, I'm happy to report, is going to be moving forward within the next month. It is a project that I know that a lot of people around town are looking forward to because the ducks have been walking on water like Jesus and not swimming in the pond. But we are looking to move that forward very quickly, and we do need a place to, again, place the material. Chris Saley can give you a little bit more explanation as to some of the other considerations that Public Works took into account in identifying and reviewing this material. Once or if this board is the pleasure to pass this forward, at that point the city will begin the remainder of our due diligence in terms of title searches and testing and all that to confirm that this is indeed a property that we want to move forward with.
Thank you. I appreciate the idea that the project of the ponds are going to be going forward, but can you elaborate, either you or Mr. Saley, elaborate on the cost neutral concept?
Sure, if I can, I'll give you a little overview. I appreciate the mayor explaining what we're looking to do, and I do appreciate the residents coming out and speaking about their concerns about added expenses, especially in this tough economic time, especially for the city of Milford. What we've been looking for, what the mayor has charged me to do, is to look at creative ways to get the same products done in a more creative way, a cost-efficient way. And this, I believe, is one of those ways. It's a multifaceted aspect. Number one, it's a 10-acre parcel that's abutting, and I'm going to pass out some maps so everybody can see where the parcel is adjacent to our present transfer station. So a little background, like I said, it's a dual purpose. Number one, it's a debris management area that we'll use during a major event. We've used many other areas in the city. One of them was the Lower Eisenhower Park area. The reason that's no longer a viable area is, number one, it's in a floodplain. There's concern about if there's a major event that we'd have debris down there and a flood could come and wipe it all the way through the river, which would be a catastrophe for the environment. And as we've listened to tonight, we've heard a lot of people talk about our concerns about the environment. So that area is no longer really a beneficial use for it. In addition, I know previously they've used it and it was an emergency, but we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive in regards to these type of management fields so that we have them in place, they're registered with DEEP, they can come down and inspect them. That's the first aspect of it. The second aspect is we're going to be dredging these ponds. Our goal is to dredge the first 3 ponds. They total about 15,000 cubic yards. The North Pond, the City Hall Pond, and the Stonebridge Pond. And each of them has their own challenges about how to dewater the mud. In other words, taking the water out of the materials as we're dredging them, what's the most cost-effective way, an environmentally sound way. I know one of the residents brought up about which ponds to do first. And I'll answer that too, if I may. There's a process that they use. It's called a turbidity curtain, and it's almost like a big sail. And what it does is it stops the fines, the little dirt that gets mobilized in the water from going downstream. So the company we've hired is a company that's well-versed in making sure that the materials, no matter what pond we started with, would not transfer to another pond. That's how this all works. It's a simple process, but it's a process that they've done many, many times, and we feel very comfortable. I know common sense would say you start from the top and you work your way down, but it might not work that way. And I'll explain why. Mike Granata is here from Go Environmental. He's our environmental consultant on this project. He's worked with Westcott and Mapes to get this project to where it is. In a year and a half, we've gotten all the permits that we need. But the ponds all have different challenges, both logistically and also environmentally. The City Hall Pond and the Stonebridge Pond have very, very low levels of PCBs. They're under 1%. Now people will say, what's the big deal? Well, under 1%, we can use that material and repurpose it somewhere on a city lot and cap it. The moment it goes over 1 to 50, we can no longer do that. And if it goes over 50 parts per million, it really becomes a very expensive process. And our thought process behind was to start with the Stonebridge and City Hall ponds because they had low levels, very low levels of PCBs, and this way if we had a component that we weren't sure where we were going to get the money from to get rid of the materials, if it went above 1%, we'd have the money in the account. That's the thought process behind this. The other question was being money neutral. So we've talked to a number of companies that are interested in subleasing the land that we presently would use. And as the mayor has stated, our goal is to do an RFP with your approval and go out to bid with this and get proposals from other companies. Some other towns have done this. It's actually been a revenue source for the city. In other words, they've gotten to use the resource of the land, and a company pays them money to use it, to lease it. Our goal is to do a 10-year lease with this process and get a company in there, and then we would use it as needed during emergencies and other times of need. Now people will ask, well, why don't we use other areas? And you are correct. There's other areas in the city that they can use. The question is, where are the 2 best areas? And there is some concern. On Friday, we had a meeting with the company that's doing it and our consultants, and there was some questions about using the Plains Road property that the city took ownership of about a year ago. There is some concern, though, about it's a regulated area. And I always said, I don't want to start a process and not have anywhere to put it. So this property, this 10 acres, I think is a very beneficial use to the city. I think it makes sense for the city as a long haul. After 10 years, we own it outright. Then it's a revenue stream. I think it's a great idea. Now, I know there were some concerns about environmental. Part of this process we'll be doing a phase 1 on the property. Phase 1 will tell us, what was the use, and pretty much everyone knows it was a milling or mining operation down there. Then we'll do a phase 2, which will entail going into the grounds and taking soil samples with Go Environmental, which is a Milford-based company, and we'll get a clear idea of what we stand. So if those things all come back clean, we'll be in a good position to be able to move forward with your approval. And finally, I would say, logistically, and you see this down in Florida, you see this down in Puerto Rico, and you see this down in Houston or in Texas, logistically, the idea is to get things back to business as quickly as possible. There's no better location in the city than to be right next to a transfer station. FEMA's requirement is to have the materials quantified, and there's no better way to quantify the materials than to be on a scale. Previous to this, they used to just guesstimate, and that's not what we want to do. So when we have a major event, we can actually estimate, streamline how we get reimbursed, and there'll be documentation that will be very clear. So again, I think it's a home run for everybody. I think it would get us, if we ever have an event, we get us back to business as quickly as possible. And I believe that it would be a great use with your approval to look at this process or this property. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up. Mr. Chair, follow up. You had indicated that the pond behind Stonebridge in City Hall had low levels of PCB, but you never said anything about the North Pond. That's been tested already, has it not?
Yes, all the ponds have been tested, and you're more than welcome if you ask, we'll give you that information. But all the ponds have been tested. The North Pond has low levels of other materials that can be purposely repurposed, so that's not a big issue. With that said, and I think I've explained to some of the aldermen when they've asked me about this, when we take the materials, when we dredge the materials, we're going to do 500 cubic yards at a time and stockpile them and dewater them. That's when we're going to know what the test shows. We did preliminary tests in the water, but as anyone knows, we could hit a hot spot. Not likely, but I want the aldermen to understand that there is a potential for that, which would substantially drive up the cost of remediating the soils.
But I know you've talked to all the experts, and we all know that there's a common sense approach to all of this. Perception is reality. It's going to be very difficult to explain when you start at a south pond and work your way up to the north pond. So if all things are equal, I would hope and assume that a common sense approach would happen here, that we would start with the north, go into that behind City Hall and the south pond. Even though you have all the experts behind you, I think people out there and the community needs to see that there is an approach here that they would think would be more of a common sense approach. Thank you.
I appreciate that. But again, and I would say this to the alderman, as long as you're under the impression, you understand that we do the North Pond and we go down to the City Hall Pond or Stonebridge Pond and we have high levels of PCBs that we have to get off the city, it's going to be an expensive process. I'm going to come back before you and say that we need money, extra money to do the work.
And that might be the case, but the fact remains that this is the property you're purchasing, or are we going to wait and postpone this vote because there has to be a phase 1 and a phase 2 given?
We can store, just to let you know, it's a 2 to 6 week process to do the phase 1 and phase 2. We're going to run concurrently with the other projects. The material will be dewatered on site at first. Truthfully, more than likely, we're going to start on the North Pond anyways, but there is a potential that the cost could go up. Once it goes over 1 parts per million, it can't be stored on a city parcel. It has to be taken off-site.
That's understood, but the fact remains that because you're going to be testing, are you recommending that we postpone this vote tonight on the parcel?
Absolutely not. It gives us, if you give us the approval, we can start these other permitting process, which is the phase 1 and phase 2, the survey work and everything else. It won't delay the project, Ray. What's going to happen is we're going to stockpile it on location at first to dewater, and then we're going to transport it to another location.
So doesn't the purchase of the property depend on phase 1 and phase 2?
With your contingency,
if I may just make clear things up, Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Vitale. Just tonight, what's before you is the authority to enter into negotiations. You have a proposed contract. This is not the final contract. The city, meaning my office, has not undergone any feasibility, which would include things like a phase 1 and a title search, because I didn't want to incur costs if we didn't want to go forward. So if this board elects to go forward and give authority to us to purchase it, we would then begin our due diligence period. If things came up, we're not beholden to consummate or complete the transaction.
Understood, but let's assume that we give you the authority tonight to go forward. Will you come back to us with the test results, and do we then vote on whether the purchase is going to go forward?
Chair, through you, theoretically and historically, no. You certainly could. If the test came back and there were surprises, things that could affect our purchase price, then we could come back and report to you. Of course, I'd want to have that because it involves the potential acquisition of property and could affect market value or what the city is willing to pay. I'd ask that it be an executive session as opposed to open session, which is allowed by FOIA.
I just would look at the process of being the fact that if we give you all authority to effectuate the agreement, and we're going to go into a phase 1, phase 2 kind of understanding, then you either going to negate the sale or you're going to buy it anyway.
Possible. The phase 1, phase 2, I don't want to get into, we're going to do a phase 1. You don't know if you need a phase 2 until you do a phase 1. Phase 1 could say you don't need a phase 2. So there's...
Understood. But if you need a phase 2 and you go to a phase 2 and it proves...
You may not want to buy the property because the phase 2 is going to tell you what you have to do.
So that's going to be your due diligence that you are going to make that decision as to not to buy the property?
As it's currently before you, yes. Unless this board wants to come back at the conclusion of the feasibility period or feasibility analysis.
Wouldn't that be more of a common sense approach to do all the testing and everything and then come back to us?
It's not been done before in that manner, and I've never been accused by my wife of having a tremendous amount of common sense, but you know, this is the way it's been done. But if you want to come back, I don't think it's a common sense approach. I mean,
if I were to buy a piece of property and I wanted to test it first, I wouldn't want to buy it until after I test it, then make the...
Nobody's saying that we have to buy the property. We're asking this board for authority to buy it.
Again, understood. You've got the authority to buy it, but then in the phases, if it comes out, let's assume the phases are all negative, that they're not to our benefit, you're going to make that due diligence decision in saying it's just too much of a risk to buy it? I don't understand that.
Again, we could come back. I'm just telling you what's before you.
It's at the pleasure of the board. You know, other people would have to speak up, but I would say that would be a more common sense approach to me anyway, so thank you.
If I could jump in on that discussion, Alderman Vitale, I would say that before you is the option to look at this property, and it would be the city attorney who's advocating for the city to look at it and what's in the best interest of the city. I hate to say it, you hired him, you trust his judgment. It's an important thing. He's not going to make a decision that if something comes back where it's contaminated, that we would purchase it. It's not an all-in thing. That's one of the reasons we looked at the phase 1 and potentially a phase 2.
All the confidence in the city attorney and you to make that decision that's proper for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Beatty.
I think perhaps an executive session is in order to discuss this for a few more minutes and see what the options are and then go forward.
Hold that thought. Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Good evening, Mr. Saley.
Good evening, Alderman Giannattasio.
Based on Alderman Vitale's comment as far as the testing, if the testing comes back negative, then what is your plan what is the plan? Where are you going to house all this material when you dredge the ponds if we are unable to buy this piece of property?
Right now, we can store it on location at both the City Hall, Stonebridge, and North Pond for up to 2 years. That wouldn't be the goal, but they should stay there for at least 3 months to de-water, to get the water to go back into the ponds that we're taking the water out. That's part of the process. We would be looking at some of the other city properties. One is the landfill at Plains Road, 0 Plains Road, I believe is the address.
Is that the landfill that we took over through tax lien?
Yes.
Or foreclosure?
Yes.
So to that point, why not, we already own that property anyways, rather than go out and spend taxpayer dollars and wait 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, Mr. Saley, that's a long time, to be revenue neutral, Mr. Mayor. Why can't we just use the D'Addario property?
Mr. Chairman, it's not 10 years, it would be revenue neutral each year from the purchase. At 10-year mark, we would be making a profit on that property. And I think the reason why Mr. Saley is concerned about the Plains Road property is because it's already a regulated property. We do not have permits to dispose of that material for more than a 2-year period on that property, and because of the nature of the property, it makes it that much more thorny to get permits through DEEP for that particular property for the long term. And it means that we would have to then go a different avenue of disposing of that material through trucking it to a location to either be burned or to be disposed of, and that becomes an expensive proposition.
If I could jump in too, I want to go back because sometimes I don't communicate as well as I probably should, and I'm a pretty simple guy. I would use it as an analogy. If you bought a house and you rented it for 10 years, and in 10 years you owned it, that's an unbelievable investment, and that's what this is. I try to keep it as simple as I possibly can. So as the mayor says, it's revenue neutral for the first 10 years, which means you're not taking any out of pocket except the initial cost to do the environmental, but after that, it's a revenue neutral. At 10 years, now it starts making a profit. Your home is paid for at that point, and now you have the benefit of the land. It's a win-win thing, and I think as the residents have spoken to, this is what the city has to look at, is looking at ways to be more creative and to save the city money and also get benefits out of it. The other thing we're looking to do, I'll share this with the board, is we're looking to go out to bid for our transfer station. And we're going to try to piggyback both of those because I think the economics of having one company do both is going to be beneficial to the company and beneficial to the city. And I believe we can save a few $100,000 with this new RFP that we're going to do for the transfer stations.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, I don't really see this as a high priority. I mean, you know, Storm Sandy, you know, that could be every 100 years. We have a transfer station on Old Gate Lane, okay, which is even closer to the shoreline. God forbid we had another disaster, where we can truck the material and we can weigh it on a scale, we can log it for FEMA purposes, and we can put it on rail. I don't particularly feel comfortable housing PCBs from dredged ponds. I would feel it's probably more prudent to haul it off-site and have it sent to these facilities and address the, you know, the waste, so to speak, for what it is, and not have to worry about down the road what's happening on this site. And if you're talking about subleasing it to a private entity, then that raises even more concerns as far as what other materials being brought in. It's not necessarily going to be from Milford, and who's monitoring that? I mean, we're on a hiring freeze, as you know. So I think for momentarily, we should be on a land acquisition freeze. I don't think we should be buying any property. I mean, we've heard from people, constituents, that don't even understand why we're even considering purchasing a piece of property at this time. I mean, it's truly a bad time. It could be, you know, it's really the worst time. So for those reasons, I don't really see the benefit. It might be a long-term benefit, but I don't think that it's really going to enhance Milford. I think that we have resources. I probably would advise you to look into Zero Plains Road to see what kind of permitting process we need to go through in order to put this material there, being that we already own it. I just don't see the sense in, you know, taking a risk with a piece of property, and we don't even know if there is any environmental impact. That's just my opinion. So, you know, I just wanted to share that with the other members of the board as well. You know, I think that, you know, maybe for the first thing we should do is, you know, I would be in favor of, you know, getting it tested. I mean, I think that probably would have been the first step before we even considered buying it. But I guess for, you know, other purposes, we're going to have to, you know, agree to, you know, have an intent to buy it. But I just can't see spending the money. That's where I'm at. Thanks.
Sure. Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Beccarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Saley, if we have to eventually ship this dirt out, how much would that, I have a few questions, but how much would that cost initially? I mean, understand,
Yes.
we could store it for 2 years for the dewatering and stuff, but eventually we'd need a site to put this. Without one, we'd have to ship it out. What would that cost us?
So the two ponds in question that we talked about that we have presently, that the test showed that they have elevated levels of PCBs. And when I say elevated, they're anything above 0.0001 is an elevated level. They're very low levels. Your body probably has more PCBs from eating tuna fish and other products in your body than those ponds presently have. So it's not a high level, it's not a toxicity level, but it depends on the amounts in the soils once we test them. If it's less than 1, it's a different number. If it's 1 to 50, it's a different number. If it's above 50, it's very expensive. But if right now, presently, for us to remove the soils as they were tested, it would cost us $724,000 to remove that stone bridge and the City Hall pond. And Mike Granata can speak to it, but the materials, if they're capped properly, there's no environmental hazard to anyone in the city, none of the residents. Again, I'll
But the $720 some odd thousand to remove that would be just for the 2 ponds.
Yes, sir.
How about if we added the 3rd pond? What would that cost?
I believe the 3rd pond was over $800,000 just for the pond. It's in your book, your pamphlet, but give me 1 second, I'll tell you.
But currently, right now, Mr. Staley, we have nowhere where we could permanently put this soil and leave it there for any more than 2 years. Am I correct in saying that?
Let me just answer it. $790,000 to get rid of the upper pond. Presently, we can stockpile it for 2 years on a city parcel. There are some concerns about the landfill parcel. And it was, there's some people that believe they can do it, and there's some people that believe that it can't be done without a proper permit, and a proper permit could take up to 6 months. Do I know that 100%? No, because all along we were looking at this as a beneficial reuse at the 10 acres.
Okay, so, but if we bought this property, we'd be able to put this dirt there for more than 2 years, unless it was over that, what, 50%?
If it's over 1.1 parts per million, then it wouldn't be able to go on the land, but you could stockpile it there for 2 years.
Okay.
And just to give you an example of the size that it would be required, the 16,000, if all 3 ponds needed to be dredged, just to put it in a quantified number, it would entail a distance of 300 feet by 100 feet by 15 feet high. That would be the volume that we would need to occupy on that parcel.
Okay. And then if we had to ship this out after, say, 2 years, and they would then, what, incinerate it, right? They would burn this? What would that cost us?
It would, round numbers, it's about $1.6 million.
Okay, so there's 2 parcels here, am I correct?
Yes.
We're talking about buying them both, right?
No. I mean, Alderman Genitaccio muddied the water a little bit over there with the second parcel, but what happened was, we're talking about the 10 acres presently, and the 10 acres are just the land next to abutting the transfer station, and that's what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
Alderman Genitaccio brought up about using the other parcel, thought it was a better choice. I respectfully disagree with that assessment, but that was the other parcel. But we already own that through a foreclosure auction.
Okay, so I mean, currently what I'm hearing is that if we go into negotiations with to buy this property, if we do find that it is contaminated, then our city attorney, mayor, you know, who's ever going to make this decision would then decline to buy the property if it's contaminated. I mean, that kind of makes sense. I understand that. The property, we're looking to spend $1.2 million to buy that, but what's the appraisal on the property? So we're going to get it for 1.2, but what has it been appraised at?
Sure. The appraisal that the city attorney had a company look at it fairly quickly was between $2.2 and $2.7 million, depending on the soil component of it.
Okay, so, yeah, well, that's good.
And I want to reaffirm this. We are purchasing it, but the expense of purchasing it will be offset by a lease from a company that will pay us rent for that property. And that will be also have to come before you as a board to approve. Everything will come before you so that you can approve it or disapprove it at that point.
Yeah. Now, if we buy it, currently we're dropping product down at Grillo's to be recycled. We have a storm or Public Works goes and they chop a whole bunch of trees down and stuff like that. We go and we have to pay to get rid of this stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
To Grillo's, okay? So our plan would then be that we would then be dropping this material onto our property if we bought it, and then we might lease out, and so we wouldn't have to pay to get rid of this, but then we would also charge maybe another company to come in, recycle this, and we would make a profit on that too, right?
The goal is there's going to be a number of companies that are going to bid on the property from the interest that I've seen. So what their make and model is going to be, we don't know. And that's why I didn't want to kind of convolute it, but yes, that's our goal. Try to be as beneficial, the best bang for the buck for the city.
If we don't buy this property, would we then not be able to dredge that third pond, the North Street pond?
What we would do if you asked not to buy this property, we would start immediately up in Hartford just to confirm that we could put it on the other landfill and make sure that it's acceptable to put it there. That would be my concern. I wouldn't want to be in a position where we started dredging and we had nowhere to put it. Our timeline right now, if you accept this, I believe it's taken about 2.5 to 3 months to get the ponds dredged and have it dewatered. It will line up perfectly. It'll align perfectly for us to take the materials and bring it to that location.
If we get lucky and we're able to put all of this dirt, let's say down on the property that we buy, and it's not too contaminated, then we pay $1.2 million for the property, but we would save $1.5 million in getting rid of this if we didn't have. So in other words, let's say we don't have to get rid of the dirt, we leave it on that property, we will in fact save $1.5 million in just being able to keep the material there. Am I right?
That would be correct. If all 3 ponds came back with levels of PCBs, yes.
Okay, so yeah, well, to me it seems like, I mean, we need more room down at the transfer station. We're paying to get rid of our debris now where we can utilize and make money off of that. If we are able to put that dirt down there, which we've had preliminary tests done, it's not to say that it won't come back higher, but we may get lucky, and it would be really the cost of just removing this would buy this property. That's not, I mean, that's not including making money from having to bring this stuff to Grillo's, and so I mean, for the extra room on the transfer station, being able to stage our own debris down there for whatever reason, and to be able to work for these 3 ponds, this could be a very big savings for the city. We're not going to buy it if it's contaminated down there, and you're talking about financing this for $100,000 a year at lower than 3.5% for 10 years. I mean, I hope that I have the figures right. I hope it comes back less contaminated, but even if it doesn't, I think we'd do pretty good. So I would be in favor of this, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Chris Saley. Mr. Saley, good evening.
Good evening.
What are some of the other possible advantages to the city to the acquisition of this property besides being a location for dredged material?
Well, as I've stated before, it's an ideal location for a bulk waste after a major storm. It's one of the things that, because of the proximity next to the transfer station, it's a win-win. So it's not just the dredge material, it's also the location of the proximity of it so close to our transfer station where we quantify and weigh everything. It saves us a lot of employee time, and I believe that we're going to have the opportunity to get material off the areas that are affected quicker, because logistically there's less driving time in the city. You don't have to scale it somewhere else and bring it to another location. Alderman Genotasio talked about bringing it up to city carting. I believe that city carting presently charges, I think, $88 a ton. Our tonnage is less than that. So I think we'd get some benefit, added benefit, by bringing it to our burn plant if appropriate. And then being able to source separate, in other words, separate the wood that we could recycle and the materials that aren't recyclable. So I think there's a lot of benefits if a major event comes. And you're right, it's the likelihood, hopefully it never happens for the next 20 years. But I wouldn't want to be the alderman that voted against it if something comes down 2 years from now and we have $1 million of finance or $1 million of reimbursement and we have issues with it because we don't have a defined location.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I think it's overly optimistic to believe that we're not going to see another natural disaster for that length of time. You know, Sandy came on the heels of Irene, for example, and what we've witnessed throughout the Caribbean, Texas, Florida, is just staggering. Puerto Rico. And in terms of, would you be able to quantify the costs associated with our present operation and what the cost savings would be relative to bulk?
Alderman Anderson, when you say the present operation of?
Have you been able to quantify what bulk is actually costing the city now versus the advantages of
okay, just so you're clear, this isn't for our annual bulk pickup. This is not for that. This is for a major event. Like, our bulk pickup would still be processed the same way we do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Alderman Bevan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. One will be for the city attorney. As I'm reading this, it says the premises are being sold as is. That brings up a big flag to me. Do we have the right of refusal if we go in and we test the soil and it is contaminated? Can we then drop out of this?
Yes, it's the feasibility. It's not as is. It's not a house. Yes, we could drop out. This is a draft contract, by the way. We haven't signed this. I wouldn't sign this until I did the feasibility. I want to do that first, but I didn't want to incur the cost of doing the feasibility until I got authority. Historically, the other projects we've talked about, frankly, we would have walked away buying different property. Now, I haven't talked to Mr. Saley about this property in terms of its intended uses. It's not for development, it's for storage of bulky hazardous waste after a natural disaster. There's some other recycling type things associated or connected to our transfer station, I presume. So our level of comfort may be better with this in terms of its intended uses and what we may find. I don't know what we'll find. We haven't done that yet. But just in comparison to prior incidents, if we were buying, for example, the River Street property that we acquired through a grant, we did a phase 1. It came up clean, but had it not been clean, we wouldn't have gone forward.
Thank you. I was just making sure that we would do the testing before we bought it. My second question is to the finance director. And my question is that, did this go before the Board of Finance?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Bevan, no, I don't believe it goes through the Board of Finance per se.
Well, within our agenda here, it has to go before the Board of Finance before it comes to us.
Mr. Chairman, through you, what's being considered in the Next agenda item is an allocation transfer, which goes to you directly. Budget memo transfers go to the Board of Finance first.
But that's on another line item, Mr. Mayor. This is on 8E, not on another item. This is within the, what the city attorney will be signing, not the transfer. If it's meant to be the transfer, it's just in the wrong spot, which it might be. I am on page 3, section 6, number A.
Yeah. Mr.
Municipal
Bevan,
approvals.
this is a draft. We've not even shared this with the other side. It's an exemplar of prior contracts we've used. So there's examples like that. Municipal approval of the Board of Finance because the proposed transaction would not involve bonded money, wouldn't be involved. The feasibility period, 30 days is there, but it could be longer. I've yet to have conversations with the seller's counsel. This is being brought before you before we even commence that process.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mr.
Alderman
Attorney.
Casey.
Can I finish up with one to the city attorney? Even though that this is a draft, will the actual document come before us, or will you take care of that if this is passed?
This is a draft showing the nuts and bolts of it. Again, it wouldn't come before you. We're asking for authority to sign something similar, almost identical. I mean, a few changes, the length of the feasibility period, things of that nature. Again, as I indicated to Alderman Vitale, you could condition your approval upon coming back and seeing the final document. I'd have to build that within the agreement, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney Burke.
Alderman Casey.
Thank you. Through you, just a couple of questions. I think we already kind of addressed this, but just to be clear, once we authorize this, we're authorizing the sale. This isn't like a hypothetical thing. You're going to have the power to effectuate the sale. And even if there are issues, that's really up to your discretion or the mayor's discretion on how they're going to respond to that through phase 1 or phase 2. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Again, the reference to phase 1, phase 2, I don't know if a phase 2 would be required. A phase 1 would be certainly something we would do, but correct.
And just to follow up, I have a question on the deed. I'm not really sure what it means, but on page 15 it says that on Schedule B, it says permitted title exceptions and said premises shall be conveyed subject to number 3, rights of tenants in possession. Does that mean that Beard will be allowed to remain in the premises or as much as they want to? Or I'm not sure what that means. Could you clarify that?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Casey, you said page 15?
Yeah.
In what section?
Yeah, section B. Schedule B, sorry, Schedule B, page 15 on AD.
Again, there are no tenants in possession. He's not a tenant. He owns it. So no, this is a form document. So to answer your question, no, that would not mean what you suggested.
And my final question is, I guess, to Director Saley. Do we have permits to use to dump on their, I mean, this is anticipated getting the permits. Do we already have the permits? Would we have to get that to the state in order to do the dumping that you want to do in the property?
After speaking with Mike Granata from Go Environmental, as long as we own that parcel, because it's not a landfill, it's not regulated, we have the right to hold it there for 2 years.
I'm saying in the property we want to buy. Can we? You want to dump on this property, right? So do we have the permits to do that? Do we need a permit to do that or anything like that?
For the dredge material you're talking about?
No, I'm talking the parcel you want to purchase.
So exactly. Once you gave us authorization, Bill Richards, myself, Mary Rose Palermo would work with our agencies and get that permit done. Yes, we would get it. It's got to be regulated for the bulk waste for major storms.
And I think you said earlier that if you had to dump on the other property, it would take about 6 months to get a permit for that. Is that correct?
I'm not 100% positive, but I believe that's the case.
Is the timetable the same for this property you want to buy? Is it pretty much the same
No,
thing, or would it be quicker? Or?
It's a different animal because it's not regulated through deep. This is a private property that the city would own.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I echo the concerns that have been brought up about the potential contamination on this site. But the other concern that I have was brought up before when you mentioned Eisenhower, when we used to store the debris and bulk material there. We can't do so anymore because it's right next to the river and it's in a flood area. This potential property that we're going to be purchasing is shoreline. I mean, it's right along the river. I mean, I'm concerned of a storm coming through and actually raising the level of the water and carrying all of this material downstream, causing even a bigger environmental issue.
I'm glad you brought that up because if you look at the topography maps, the location at Eisenhower Park is substantially lower. This is out of the floodplain. Eisenhower Park is in the floodplain. The risk of this, can I say we couldn't have a 500-year flood? But this is substantially higher than any of the other properties, and it is out of the floodplain. After talking with Mary Rose Palermo, we feel very comfortable that this would be an ideal location for that location for bulky waste.
I definitely understand that it is higher, and you know, with the storms that we've been having and seeing around the world lately, it is potential for something like that to happen. I'm happy to hear that you spoke to Mary about it, but it is a concern.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Director Saley. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Couple questions. One is, what's the acreage on the transfer station right now? What's the total acreage?
I believe it's about 2¼ acres. 2¼ I don't have that answer. I think it's about 2¼ but don't hold me to it.
Okay. And we're looking to purchase 10 acres, and that's a 7-acre parcel and a 3-acre parcel, right?
We separated it to show where our 3 acres would be and where the 7 acres would be, yes.
And we're proposing paying $130,000 an acre.
Yep.
And what's the volume of material, you mentioned it before and I missed it, that would be coming out of the 3 ponds?
The 3 ponds are approximately 15,000 cubic yards.
And it takes up...
I'm sorry.
Cubic yards?
Cubic yards, yep. 3 by 3. By 3.
So that'll take up how much space?
Again, rough math, it's about 300 feet long by 100 feet wide by 15 feet high.
Okay. So, I mean, do we really need 10 acres? Can we cut that in half or take a portion of that? If that's the primary purpose we're purchasing it right now, that's why we're under the gun is so we have a place to dump that. Do we need 10 acres, all that 10 acres?
Again, the idea behind this is to be able to sublease it to a company. After talking with a number of companies, they felt pretty strongly that they needed a minimum of 6 acres, and 7 or 8 would be better for them to sublease it to make it economically feasible for them to pay rent to offset the cost of purchasing the property. And again, making it so it's revenue neutral to the city.
But we can always come back and do that.
To purchase?
Maybe come back with, we purchased 3 acres to take care of what we need to address now, and then maybe address that later on, once we have some concrete people that really want to lease it, because that's all hearsay right now.
Well, I've spoken to a number of companies, and they're waiting for the RFP. I couldn't do an RFP until I get approval from you. I feel pretty comfortable that the numbers will come in close to where I want. And after talking with the business owners, 3 acres doesn't work for their business model that they're doing. Like I said, they would want more, but 6 to 7 was the minimum they would need, and we need 3 to 4 for our areas for the times that we need them.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm talking about our immediate needs for the ponds. So,
Alderman Gurman, I can't say it enough. If you want to pay for that, that's fine, but the company will not buy or lease that small of an acreage. They need more acreage. That's the whole point. That's why this makes sense. The subleaser is going to pay the expense of acquiring the land, and the city will get a benefit of that land. So, ultimately, it's your decision, though.
Thank you.
Alderman Vaccarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't help but to think of the the added values that this property can give us in saving taxpayer dollars and making things even work better for the city. But, you know, my thought was I think we're back up now. We're back online. Could you just give me an approximate, an estimate of what we pay now to get rid of our debris, leaves, tree removal? I'm not talking any storm stuff, but you know, the Grillos, I mean, for the recycling a year, maybe approximate.
We average between $90,000 and $110,000 a year.
Okay, so that, yeah, $110,000. That's almost, you know, the cost of buying this property. Now, my thought was we have the orchards. That's an enterprise fund, works beautiful, and we have the Listman's Landing, which is an enterprise fund. They cost the city nothing. If we had an enterprise fund down there that took all of the city's leaves, all of the tree stumps, everything, and gave them a yearly grant, you know, the $100,000 or whatever they needed for their operational cost, we could again make a tremendous amount of savings down there with another enterprise fund to not cost the city a dime. So, you know, instead of leasing, that could be a perfect enterprise fund down there, again, being a tremendous saving to the city to do that down there. Just a suggestion and an idea of how much more we can make value out of this property.
That's actually a great idea.
Thank you, Alderman Beccarelli. Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Mr. Saley, why not have, if your intent moving forward that you mentioned here tonight is to outsource the transfer station, why not have this company or whatever company ends up being the, you know, the wins the bid, because you're going to go out for RFP, right? Why not have them purchase the property and then the property's on the tax rolls? Have you considered that?
It actually is, it's a very good point, but we want to try to open up to a bigger market, and there's some smaller companies that don't have the resources to pay that, but are a good running small company. Part of the RFP would be required that they would pay the equivalent of taxes in lieu of, so there'll be no loss in taxes to the city. I apologize for not explaining that in more detail earlier. So it's, again, a win-win for everyone. I try to open up it so it's a bigger part. As you know, Alderman Giannattasio, there's a lot of big players, but I want to go after the smaller players that might be interested in running it. And putting them both out simultaneously, I think we get the economics of scale of not only the land, but the transfer station. And I think you're going to find that this return on investment is going to be substantial.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, there's been some discussion here as far as making this a potential, you know, profit center. Now, I know whoever ends up leasing this property from us, and let's just use Grillo as a perfect example. If we bring material in there, yeah, he's paying us rent, but he's still going to charge us to process that material. The only advantage that I see is storing material up into 2 years. That's what I'm hearing from you, depending on what type of material it is. So I'm having a hard time with this, Mr. Saley, because zero, okay? We have at Zero Plains Road a perfect opportunity. If you put your time and effort in getting the proper permits to store this pond residue or fill, whatever you want to call it, that potentially has PCBs, we wouldn't have to be up against the wall looking to purchase a piece of property and be in jeopardy of not getting all of our ponds done. Because I feel like that's what we're being told here tonight. And I take exception to that, because I don't like to make decisions under pressure, and I feel that when we went out and bonded for the ponds, it should have been discussed at that time that we needed, or we should have discussions about where to store the material. Now, it just so happens that we own a landfill through foreclosure, and now you want to continue to spend taxpayers' money, and you want to open up the floodgates and bring in different material from surrounding areas and put it all onto this property. And we don't even know if there is an environmental impact on this property. We already know that the landfill is a landfill. So I don't see the benefit in taking the risk. And I don't see any payback with us being able to dump there for free, because that's just not going to happen. Because a business is a business. And if the business is paying rent to the city, that's fine. But if you expect them to do things for free, then you are mistaken.
Well, if I could respond to that, with all due respect, a lot of municipalities have what they call a host fee when they have an asset like that. So they get a royalty off some of the tonnage that comes in and out. So there's ways to make money for the city. And again, I'll disagree with you about the Plains Road property. I think the Plains Road property has a lot of upside. And I think to pigeonhole it with some more environmental issues doesn't make sense. And I think I've explained that to you before. But again, it's not costing the city any money to do the project. I understand your concerns, and I respect them, but I would say that this is why this asking for permission, letting the city attorney negotiate along with myself, doing an RFP, and then seeing what's something, if nothing comes of it, we can just walk away. It costs the city nothing. But if something does come of it, some other towns have done this and been very successful to actually change from a liability to an asset and produce income. And in these challenging economic times, I think it makes sense for the city to look at all avenues to try to increase their bottom line.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call vote, Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Anderson?
Yes.
Alderman Beatty?
Yes.
Alderman Bevan?
No.
Alderman Casey?
No.
Alderman Gurman? No. Alderman Gennatasio?
No.
Alderman Golden?
Yes.
Alderman Grant?
No.
Alderman Hardiman? Alderman Smith? Alderman Sutton?
Yes.
Alderman Vecchiarelli? Alderman Vitro? Alderman Vitale?
Here we got 8 yes and 6 no. The motion passes. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you.
What? What did you say? No. I didn't entertain that motion. It wasn't a motion. It was just a thought. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8F.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached commercial energy sales agreement between the City of Milford and Champion Energy Services, LLC, for the purchase of electricity, and to authorize the mayor and purchasing agent to take all steps necessary, including but not limited to the signing of documents to effectuate said agreement.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Vecchiarelli, you missed agenda 8F. That's all right.
Yep, my eyes are getting worse. Let me redo this, okay? 8F, the Board of Aldermen approval. I move to approve the request for the attached allocation transfer number 1 for Oronoque Road property.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Gurman.
I'd like to make a proposal that it comes back to us before we make the purchase. You're going to have 4 weeks to do a phase.
Alderman Gurman, there's a motion on the floor. You want to amend the motion?
Yes, possibly.
Well, you could amend the motion. You're not going to make another motion. Repeat your amendment, please, Alderman Gorman.
I would like to have it open till the next session. When we get through the phase one, that's going to take 2-3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before the next session, that we can make this, approve this motion for funding.
Is there a second on that amendment? You want to speak up, Alderman Bevan, sort of for the record?
I second that.
We have an amendment on the floor and a second. Did you get the? Keep it open, yeah. Any discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Anderson.
Through you, sir. I know the intent of what you're attempting to do, but to me, that was more of a suggestion than a motion. And when you offer a motion, it should have exact language. So, why don't we take a moment, form a motion to bring before us?
Already a motion on the floor, Alderman Anderson. You're speaking of the amendment, correct?
I realize that, and I would very definitely vote against what was offered.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. You want to make that amendment more detailed for Alderman Anderson and the rest of us, the board? Five-minute recess. Will the Aldermen please take their seats? Recess is over. Alderman Gurman, you want to read that amendment to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I wish to withdraw my motion. I'm not in favor of the transfer until a phase one, but I will withdraw that motion and accept it as it is.
Alderman Bevan, you have to retract the second first.
Mr. Chairman, I rescind my second.
And Alderman Gurman retracted the amendment. Thank you, Alderman Gurman. Back to the original motion. All in favor? Opposed? Roll call vote. Madam Chairman, please.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Beatty.
Yes.
Alderman Bevan.
No.
Alderman Casey.
No.
Alderman Gurman.
No.
Alderman Gennatasio.
No.
Alderman Golden. Move down. Alderman Grant.
No.
Alderman Hardiman. Alderman Hardiman? Sorry. Alderman Smith. Alderman Sutton.
Yes.
Alderman Vecchiarelli. Alderman Vitro.
Yes.
Alderman Vitale. Alderman Golden. Motion carries 8-6.
Motion passes 8-6. Alderman Vecchiarelli, agenda item 8G.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for the attached commercial energy sales agreement between the City of Milford and Champion Energy Services, LLC, for the purchase of electricity, and to authorize the mayor and the purchasing agent to take all steps necessary, including but not limited to the signing of documents to effectuate said agreement.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, as you discuss this item, I would request that a member consider the following amendment to this. Right now, the motion reads an agreement or a resolution between the City of Milford and Champion Energy Services, LLC. I would recommend that you adopt a motion to amend and substitute Champion Energy, LLC with, quote, lowest priced qualified supplier, end quote. The energy market is very fluid. We have John Arbella, who's a city consultant who's helping us to navigate the purchase of this extended electrical contract. He can speak to this issue. There's a couple of different considerations why we want that language change and not to go with Champion Energy Services. Again, when we priced this out approximately 3 weeks ago, Champion Energy was, at that moment in time, the lowest in the business. We are going to go out again to see the best priced service for Milford. The other consideration that we are going to be considering as well is the fact that we are going forward with a microgrid, and we want to make sure that our contract that we have with this energy supplier is going to include the energy output from our microgrid. When we went out last time as an example, and Champion Energy was the lowest price, they have different requirements for a microgrid than other energy suppliers. So with that, if you do have questions about the particular process, if you have questions about why this is the exact right time to go out, Mr. Arbella can certainly give you more background, better background on questions you may have.
Alderman Beccarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment up to this motion, and I'd like to strike the words Champion Energy Services, LLC, and to insert the lowest prices for energy services.
No, lowest price registered supplier.
Registered, I'm sorry, to the lowest
Lowest price qualified supplier.
lowest price.
Lowest priced qualified supplier.
Okay, to the lowest, let me see, to the lowest priced registered suppliers. Okay, let's see. Okay, we're good. Again, and for the final and third time, to the lowest priced qualified supplier.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Yeah. Alderman Gurman.
Is that on the motion or on the?
To the motion.
Discussion on the amendment?
Yes.
I have no discussion on the amendment. I have some questions.
We're on the amendment. So you have any discussion on the amendment? Okay. Any more discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Anderson.
My question to the appropriate person is how long is the lock-in period, and whether the supplier can assign their interest under said agreement. So 2 questions. How long is the lock-in period? And can the supplier assign to another party their role in this agreement.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Anderson, the proposal is for a 5-year term, and I'll let Mr. Arbella speak to the details. However, this is specifically for us. It is specifically for particular buildings, meters, and particular properties, meters, so that I don't think that there is the ability to assign our interest, even if the city does alienate a particular piece of property. But I will, again, let Mr. Arbella confirm that.
Is this working? Okay. Hello, thank you.
Good evening, sir.
So the agreement is for a 60-month term. It's what we're recommending. It's what the city has done in the previous 2 contracts that they've signed for all their meters. And the contract is assignable in the sense that the company can sell. These are procurement contracts, commodity contracts. If they decide to, if they're acquired by another entity, then that new entity has the ability to take an assignment of all of the contracts that they have under agreement. And that happens a lot in the industry. There's been a lot of consolidation in the industry.
That's exactly what I was looking for.
But the terms and conditions of that agreement are still, they're responsible for.
Thanks. That clarifies it for me. Thank you very much.
Sorry, sir, can you repeat the length of that term once more? 60 months. 60 months. Thank you. Any more questions on the amendment? See, no more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. On the original motion, any discussion on the original motion? Alderman Gurman?
Yes, thank you. Just looking for a rate. So you have a current rate now. Is it for a certain length of time? Share with it.
The current rate is fixed at .07470 as of today, but as the mayor mentioned, it's a commodity, so it trades daily, and the shut-off price every day is at 4 o'clock. So as of today, it's .07470. The city's currently paying .08370. So it's about a $900,000 savings over the 5-year period of time compared to your current run rate.
So if next week it jumps up to .10, we're paying that.
So it's been running between .07449 and .07470 for the last 3 weeks. But we are recommending that you move on this fairly quickly because as the winter approaches, natural gas prices tend to rise because it's used for heating and for generation, and there's a bottleneck in Connecticut because of our restricted pipelines. So we're recommending the city act soon.
So is it a fixed rate for 5 years?
Yes.
At .074 for 5 years, fixed rate?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions on the original motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 9, new business not on the agenda, which is introduced. There is no new business. Agenda item number 10, budget memo transfers, consideration of budget memo transfer. There's none. Agenda item number 11, refunds, consideration of refunds in the amount of $18,140.75. Is there a motion? Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Nick. Alderman Beccarelli.
You did.
Well, I read it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Report of standing committees. Ordinance Committee, Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ordinance Committee met earlier this evening and have referred with a unanimously favorable recommendation an ordinance establishing Chapter 12 prohibiting the storage, disposal, or use of waste from oil and gas exploration or extraction activities or any derivative thereof, Section 12-1 through 12-5 of the City of Milford Code of Ordinances. This again is the prohibition on the storage or the disposal of chemicals related to fracturing or fracking. I'd like to make that, submit that to the full board as a motion. Also, just as a point, Ms. Jen Siskin, a local coordinator from Food Water Watch, was gracious enough to stay through the duration here in order to answer any questions. So I would remind the chair that she's available to answer questions any of the members have on that.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Any discussion? Sorry. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Reports of special committees. Any special committee reports? Seeing none, is there any reports of any special committees? Who has an announcement? You have an announcement, Alderman Gerber? Go ahead.
I'd like to make an announcement. October 19th, the City of Milford Health and Wellness Committee will be having a health and wellness fair. October 19th, 11:30 to 4:30. It's in the Parsons Complex next door. So I'd encourage everybody to join. There's going to be a lot of vendors, probably 30, 40 vendors there. It'll be really very informative stuff. So thank you. You can get your flu shot as well.
Thank you, Alderman Gurman. Is there any more reports of special committees? Seeing none, open on item 14. Relative to item 14 on the agenda, executive session, I respectfully submit the following for your consideration and action. 14A, discussion concerning litigation concerning the manufacturing, the distribution of prescription opiates. Item 14B, consideration of settlement of Milford Beach Association, LLC versus City of Milford regarding 80 East Broadway. 14C, consideration of settlement of Newport Associates, LLC versus City of Milford regarding 81 through 91 Robert Treat Drive and 1 Robert Treat Drive. Item 14D, consideration of settlement of Robert Treat Associates, LLC versus City of Milford regarding 0 Robert Treat Drive. Item 14E, consideration of settlement of L.I. Meng versus City of Milford regarding 212 Honeycomb Lane. Item 14F, consideration of settlement of McDonald's Real Estate Company v. City of Milford versus the City of Milford regarding 439 Bridgeport Avenue. And 14G, consideration of settlement of Elizabeth Ippolito versus City of Milford regarding 286 Broadway.
Mr. Chairman, if your board would consider allowing Attorney Burcham, myself, to join you for 14A, and Attorney Burcham, myself, and Dan Thomas, our city assessor, for 14B through 14G.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
And we have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session. We're out of executive session. Alderman Vaccarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize settlement in the matter of the Milford Beach Association, LLC, versus City of Milford regarding 80 East Broadway, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize settlement in the matter of the Newport Associates, LLC versus City of Milford, in regards to 81 through 91 Robert Treat Drive and 1 Robert Treat Drive, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize settlement in the matter of Robert Treat Associates, LLC versus the City of Milford, in regards to 0 Robert Treat Drive, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize settlement in the matter of Li Ming versus City of Milford, in regards to 212 Honeycomb Lane, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize settlement in the matter of McDonald's Real Estate Company versus the City of Milford regarding 439 Bridgeport Avenue, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize settlement in the matter of Elizabeth Ippolito versus the City of Milford in regards to 286 Broadway, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney, as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Grant, do you have something to share with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to announce on behalf of the Library Subcommittee that myself and Alderman Smith are a part of, that the Friends of the Milford Library are hosting the second annual Party in the Stacks. It's an excellent event that was very well received last year. I know the Mayor, Alderman Smith, and myself attended it last year. It's October 22nd. It's a great event. 21st, thank you. 21st, Saturday, October 21st. I invite all of the aldermen and everybody in the City of Milford to come and attend this wonderful event. Thank you.
Time, Alderman Grant? Alderman Grant? You don't have the times? Okay. Also, I'd like to announce the Boys and Girls Club has an event, Pumpkins on the Pier, both Friday night and all day Saturday, just for your...
What is that?
Pumpkin on the Pier.
Pumpkin on the Pier?
Friday and Saturday this
Friday.
weekend.
7 to 10 on Saturday.
6 to
Friday.
10 on Friday, and I believe
Yeah.
10 to
6 to 10 on Friday night and all day Saturday.
10 to 5 p.m. on Saturday.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey,